This is Science Friday. I'm Ira Flatow. If you saw the sci-fi blockbuster Avatar, you probably remember that movie's epic final fight scene. In that scene, Jake Sully battles it out with the bloodthirsty Colonel Quaritch.
Give it up, Quaritch. It's all over.
Nothing's over while I'm breathing.
I kind of hoped you'd say that.
Oh, I hate it when that happens. It just spoils my day. Actor Stephen Lang plays Colonel Quaritch. In that scene, he fights Jake from inside something called an amp suit. It's a 16-foot mechanized skeleton. But if you're wondering how Lang managed to act in that thing while blasting through a forest in a 16-foot metal suit, well, he did and he didn't. Lang provided the performance, but the face you see in that amp suit is a digital double. It was created by scientist and CGI wizard Paul Debevec. How do you create convincing digital doubles? And will digital doubles doom human actors like Stephen Lang? We're going to ask them. They're both here with us. How do you like that? Stephen Lang is an actor. His roles include Colonel Quaritch in Avatar, Thomas Stonewall Jackson in Gods and Generals. Welcome.
Thank you.
We can't offer you that kind of excitement. But Paul Debevec is a Chief Visual Officer at USC's Institute for Creative Technologies. Paul, welcome to Science Friday.
Thank you.
Let's talk about making convincing digital doubles. Why is that so hard to do?
Well, as it turns out, the human face is something that we have so much experience looking at, and particularly recognizing movie stars. There's actually cells in my brain that have been programmed to recognize Stephen Lang himself, whatever he shows up in. And if there's the slightest bit wrong in a digital representation, we're going to think it's pretty fishy.
Don't they have a word for that, the uncanny valley?
That's exactly it. And in fact, if you get a digital character that looks good, but not quite there, it's actually worse than not even trying at all. If it's got some things are right and others are not, then you can have a sense of revulsion. And this is what Matsuhiro Mori described as the uncanny valley with respect to robotics some time ago.
Yeah, so if it's like a cartoon, we say, yes, that's a cartoon. But if it's close to being human, we point out all the little things that are not working.
Yeah, we might think it's a zombie.
Paul, you've been able to create a realistic digital double by photographing actors like Stephen inside a light stage, this giant little lit-up buckyball that we have right there. What's going on inside of that thing?
Well, we've built a few of these things at the USC Institute for Creative Technologies, and it's a controlled lighting sphere where we can change the color, the polarization, the intensity, and the directionality of the lighting and take high-resolution photos. And we've come down to just the right photos we need to take from the right angles in order to have the data we need to solve for a 3D representation of somebody's face and all of the ways that skin can reflect light, so it looks like the real person.
Right. Stephen, tell us what it was like inside. What did you have to do? How did it feel?
Well, I'd quote William Shatner on it. It's like being bombarded with gamma rays, although I have no idea what gamma rays are or what it feels to be bombarded like them. But I'll tell you what it really reminded me of is 19th century collodion photography, which I've had occasion to pose for. You have to sit stock still. Of course, they'll put a brace behind your head to do it. And I remember while I was in this rig here being uncomfortably still, it being a requirement for a long, long time. So I suppose the more things change, the more they stay the same in some respect, just to get the proper image.
Right. Sounds like you're getting your MRI of your whole body, or that sort of thing. You can't move. Well,
and you can't get out of there either. Right?
Let's see what they actually happened. There's the image.
Yeah, I like that image so much. I use it as the masthead for my Twitter account, which is I am Stephen Lang, if you'd like to join me.
Very nice.
But it's an homage to Debevec that I do that because I look much better digitally than I do in real life, as far as
You
I'm
like those
concerned.
scars on your face?
I love them. You know, girls like them too.
So the funny thing is, we did the scan toward the end of the Avatar production, and Steven's hair had actually grown back over the area where the scars are. So if you look closely, you can see the scars actually go on top of his hair a little bit on the left image there.
I have to watch the movie
So
one more.
don't look closely.
That's right. Can you tell when it's you or not you up on the screen there, whether it's the digital double or not?
No, I know that in the battle with Sully, whenever I'm in the amp suit and the amp suit is being very, very active, I know it's the digital me. But I get pretty caught up in the story as well, and you know, I basically look at creating a role like this is really a collaboration between a lot of people, and so I take a certain amount of credit for it, but I also, you know, you got to give credit where credit is due to the animators as well.
Yeah, if you've got a question in the audience, you want to ask a question, then put your hand up and we'll get the microphone over to you. Paul, have we crossed that uncanny valley at this point? It looks so good, right? It's very believable.
So we've had a few digital characters in movies that have done very well. The longest screen time that we've seen of a fully digital actor was the old version of Brad Pitt in The Curious Case of Benjamin Button, work done by Digital Domain. We've seen some other attempts that weren't quite as successful. So I'd say that, you know, it's like maybe we've made a couple of trips across the uncanny valley, but we haven't, you know, set up camp over there yet. Occasionally people also get lost on the way.
What were some of those unsuccessful ones?
Oh my gosh, well, this is where it's a lot of people laud the effort to create the young version of Jeff Bridges in Tron Legacy, but say that it did not do as well as Benjamin Button. As it turns out, it's actually much harder to do a younger person than an older person, and also to create, like, we don't know what Brad Pitt's going to look like in 30 years, but we know exactly what Jeff Bridges looked like in the 1980s, so it's a much harder target to shoot for.
Let's go to the audience for a question here.
Why is creating a digital double of an actor's face easier than just using the actor?
Yeah,
That's a great question. So in that scene you saw from Avatar, everything in that shot is done with computer graphics, amazing work by Weta Digital in New Zealand that got our face scans and then did everything else. The jungle is all digital, the amp suit is digital, the lighting is all simulated digitally here. And so if they had just taken a video of Steven and tried to paste it in, the lighting wouldn't have matched, the forces on his body would have been very difficult to match. They do things like that for some of the shots, but for that kind of shot where it's a medium shot and you can see absolutely everything and how it interacts with each other, it's so much easier if it's all digital and you can just solve for one lighting solution and then it looks realistic.
Also, the amp suit is really the issue here. We had several versions of the amp suit, including the real-life 16-footer. But of course, the real-life 16-footer can't do what that does. As a matter of fact, it can take one step forward, which gives you, you know, room to cut away from it. Right. So really, we're serving the amp suit in this case. And in fact, the only time during the filming of Avatar where I had to do exclusive mocap work was when the amp suit was involved. Everything else is live action. The sequels will be quite different.
Wait for the sequel.
In fact.
Do you think any real people will be in the sequel?
No, I'm subletting my image to them for the next 3 years while I go off into a television series.
Oh, wow. Well, let's think it. So you can sort of lease your...
Listen, if the actors work hard in these films, I know it's become a big issue.
Yeah.
Should motion capture actors be recognized for their work? And I mean, you just have to look at the work that Zoe Saldana does in Avatar, or that Andy Serkis does in Planet of the Apes, or as Gollum in Lord of the Rings, to know that that's a those are great performances.
So there's no real philosophical fear that actors, human flesh, bones, are going to be done away with.
Well, I don't know if it's a philosophical fear, but I think that there are some real business issues to come up and some issues of ethics to come up in this. But, you know, the concept that my data can be banked and that, in fact, I can do films, I can do 7 films simultaneously, or I can do films long after I'm dead. You know, I may actually go into porno 10 years after I'm dead.
Okay. So
Depends who controls my rights, you
That's
know?
right.
So I think it's important to point out that so far, we're still on the other thing, okay. It's important to point out that every good performance by a digital actor has been good because there was a real performance of a real human actor who's created that character, worked with the director to get a good performance, and it has been used to faithfully drive the digital character. That line of dialogue you have in there, you absolutely said that line of dialogue, and the people at Weta used everything they were able to capture of it to drive the digital character. We're still decades away from the artificial intelligence breakthroughs that will be required to replace what an actor might actually do. And I mean, why would you bother with that? It's like actors are really good at this.
Yeah.
And it's an old profession. You know, I'm not really concerned about it. We've been around from the beginning, and we'll probably be there at the end.
Right, and who are you gonna recognize in a restaurant if it's an avatar? No autographs on
I think
that
a
one.
Na'vi would get recognized in a restaurant right away, actually.
A vegan restaurant, no doubt.
Let's go to the audience here.
Hi, I have kind of grown up watching video games evolve, and I'm wondering, you know, seeing what incredible things video games look like now compared to the stuff that you guys put together in movies. Do those two industries talk to each other at all, or are you guys kind of in separate corners? Or
Absolutely. There's a ton of overlap. People who used to work in visual effects are now working in video games. People who work in video games work in visual effects. There's this great conference called the ACM SIGGRAPH conference that happens every year, and all of these groups get together and talk to each other about this. And a lot of the reason that video games are looking so much more realistic, and the gap between reality, what you see in a movie and what you see in a video game is narrowing, is that these communities are trying to develop the same scientific principles and engineering solutions to solve these problems.
I did a video game last year. I did Call of Duty, and it was heavily scripted. I worked motion capture for about 8 or 9 days on it. In fact, it was like doing a film. It's just that the platform was different.
This is Science Friday from PRI, Public Radio International. I'm Ira Flatow here in Pasadena. We're talking about digital video. You can't talk about digital video without you thinking about the military must be interested in this stuff, right? Is there a cross-fertilization here going on?
Well, the idea of virtual reality in general, or being able to create virtual experiences that are just as compelling as what we can do in the real world, has tons of applications. And one of the things that's currently very hard, and this is one of the interests of some of the sponsors of our institute, is to create the face-to-face human interaction you might have if you're working with a superior, if you're working with some kind of difficult negotiation. There's no flight simulator for social skills at this point, and that's where a lot of the interest in funding this research comes from.
You brought this up in jest about you could be acting after you're dead, right? But there are all these actors, there are all these old images of actors who are
Right.
dead. Oh, I see popping up in commercials and things like that. So it's not really science fiction,
No.
is it? I mean, it's possible to bring people back and put them in a movie.
It is, and I don't know how I feel about that. As much as I would love to have done a film with Bogart, it wouldn't be the same being in one.
He did have Lauren Bacall in the real flesh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how I feel about that. I think one of the great things about being an actor is that I'm a contractor. I don't have to do nothing I don't want to do. Unless I sign the contract and say, then I have to deliver. And the idea of someone else having control over what I'm going to be in is a little bit rancid to me.
Well, did you want to say
Yeah,
something? Paul?
so if anyone watched the Billboard Music Awards, there was in the middle of the show a performance by some version of Michael Jackson. And this was actually done with computer graphics. There was a visual effects supervisor who worked on Avatar named Steve Rosenbaum. He was the visual effects supervisor for the work on that digital Michael Jackson, and it was pretty convincing. It was him actually singing, fortunately, but all of the facial expressions and the way that it would interact with, we helped with this a little bit, were done based on lots of reference and what you can put together from what's around today.
Right. Well, what about the issue of you're an avatar and you're in that amp suit and there's digital capture going on. You're acting in the suit. There are animators around filling in other things. Who gets the Oscar for that?
At the moment, none of us
I think
do.
Steven should.
It all goes to technical effects, I think. But the way I look at it, it's eventually someone will get tapped for a nomination for an extraordinary performance. But when you're talking about how many of our films come out every year, and there's so many wonderful Oscar-worthy performances that are made, I can understand why you would choose not to nominate,
Right.
a mocap performance, I think. But I think there'll come a time when they will, or else they'll create another type of award, I would think.
Right.
Yeah, film is a very collaborative process, and already any individual who works in a movie is supported by tons of other crafts and technicians. There are actually 2,140 names in the credits of Avatar. And the Oscars go to a few unique individuals who are at the top of this. It could go to a motion capture actor just as easily as a real actor, and I think that there's an understanding within the acting community that that's a wonderful way to practice the craft today as well.
They're starting to get that, because I think people were a bit afraid of it, and still are to some extent. But just 2 weeks ago, Ellen Burstyn, who's a pal and an actor who's been working for a long, long time, said, Stephen, I really want to do that motion capture. I want to get into that motion capture. And there's just this craving, what did you call it, where we're craving globs of something.
Right.
There's a craving as an actor to do something you haven't done before, to work in a milieu that you haven't worked in before. And motion capture brings you right back to the fundamentals of acting, because it's totally imagination-based. You have to create everything.
Do you think that young actors who grew up on video games, or this is what they're going to be craving now?
I think they'll be taking it in school. It'll be part of acting programs. If it is, I'm sure it is already at some places, and will be.
Paul, I'm going to give you my blank check question I give a lot of my guests, which is if you had a blank check and you could develop a new technology, or you see where one is going that needs to be developed, where would you spend the money? How would you spend the money on?
Well, I think it would be very exciting to basically create the holodeck of Star Trek, because it's not only thank you for that.
Holodeck.
Okay. It's not only the greatest tool for education, like you see in the series, for training and for entertainment. They play the Sherlock Holmes episodes, but it would be the perfect environment to make movies in, because you can say, okay, give me sunset, put us in Victorian England, make this actor 2 inches taller for this scene, and all of that is possible in the virtual world.
Wow, and it could be done with the big enough bucks.
If we have the blank check, yeah, we can do it.
Somebody in the audience out here has one. Not in my audience, though. Yes, quickly, last question. I have a question.
If you can make a digital face, can you make a whole digital self of yourself, like a version of yourself digitally?
If you can make the face, can you make the whole self?
That's a great question. So we scan the faces in the most detail because that's what you see the close-ups of, but there's also great technologies for scanning bodies. There's things that Steven's been in where they record the motion of how you walk, and you can loop together walking and run cycles to start creating characters that can turn and move around. And if you play a modern great video game like the one that Steven was in, you'll see full versions of the characters that are fully instrumented and able to go around. It's a lot of great new technologies coming together for that.
Well, Steven, an Avatar sequel you said is coming up. Is it going to be even more digital? And give us an idea of what we could see?
Well, there'll be we're going to be filming the next Avatar 2, 3, and 4 simultaneously. So that in itself should be quite an adventure.
Really? 2, 3, and 4.
Simultaneously. So it's, what film are we doing today? So that should be pretty exciting. And I think that just because of the nature, Jim Cameron, Paul knows him well, he's going to create scenarios which create problems for himself, technical problems. It's just what he does. And so they'll have to come up with new solutions in order to meet the demands of the things that he wants to achieve, because you've seen the world of Pandora, but we haven't seen it in all its splendor and all its environments yet.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't you die in the last movie?
Ira, it is science fiction, you know.
I keep forgetting that. Thank you, gentlemen. This is excellent. Thank you. Stephen Lang, actor known for his role in Avatar and Gods and Generals, and 2, 3, 4 Avatars to come. Paul Debevec is Chief Visual Officer at the USC's Institute for Creative Technologies. Fascinating. Thank you, gentlemen, for taking time.
Thank you.